Last night's 115-103 win over the Boston Celtics was the biggest Sixer win of the Joel Embiid era, the biggest win of the process era, and arguably the best playoff win since I was, 9 years old, going all the way back to 2001. I'm recording this in the morning because, one, I wanted to watch the Suns-Nuggets game last night and didn't really have time to do a post-game thing, but maybe in the morning you have a bit more clarity on some things after you think about it, sleep on it and stuff, and I'm still hyped off of last night. I'm equally nervous as fuck for tomorrow, to be clear, but for now, we can celebrate the fact that this type of win was a win that contenders do. The type of win where you go on a game 5 on the road and you just dominate thoroughly. It was a thorough ass kicking from start to finish, and I'm going to ignore the last 2 minutes when Peyton Pritchard started hitting 3 after 3, and I'm sure Sixer fans, including myself, started getting a little freaked out. It's like, all right, guys, what the fuck? But, that's neither here nor there. That was the type of win where if you want to prove yourself to be a championship contender, your MVP has to show up, your team has to show up, and you have to play solid defense, and you just can't give anything easy. And that's what the Sixers did yesterday. It was a great win from top to bottom, because the coaching staff that I'm going to talk about in a minute has pushed the right buttons, and I'm someone who has bitched about Doc Rivers for 3 years now since he's been in Philadelphia, and I know a lot of you Philadelphia 76er fans have too, but let's give Doc his credit. And everybody played well on the Sixers. Everybody who got minutes last night had a positive impact. So I want to go over, to me, the 5 things that stood out. There was a lot of things that stood out, but to me, there were 5 things about last night's win that I thought were crucial, and so let's get into the first one. First one is the defense. We toggled through a lot of defensive coverages, but I think last night that was the most switching that we have done in the playoffs, and it worked to great effect. It forced Al Horford to shoot 0 of 7 from 3. Joel Embiid sometimes would end up on Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, just to mix it up so you don't give the Celtics just wide open look after wide open look. There was switches, there was drop coverage, there was blitzing, the communication off the ball. There were a few possessions last night where I was like, oh wow, like the communication between everybody, even among the quote-unquote weakest link defenders like Tyrese Maxey and James Harden, the communication was on point. There were pre-switches, they were double and recover. Like on the very first possession of the game, I knew the Sixers were going to be locked in because PJ Tucker had Jaylen Brown dribbling in the corner on the left side of the floor, and Tyrese Maxey quickly came over to double Jaylen Brown and help out PJ. And by the way, Jaylen Brown had just been frying the Sixers all series when he gets the ball, which has been the issue apparently for Boston. Every time Jaylen Brown didn't touch the ball, it was like, thank you, Celtics, for bailing us out. But anyway, the first possession, Tyrese Maxey came over to help out PJ Tucker on Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown throws a pass to the corner where Tyrese Maxey left, and Maxey just sprinted and recovered and contested the Derek White shot, and it was a miss. The first shot of the game, the first miss of the game, and that's when I knew the Sixers were going to be locked in. Now, I didn't expect, a lead of 21 at one point in the game, but I knew that at least they were going to be in the fight, because Game 5s in the process era, when the series is tied 2-2 in the second round, have not gone exactly well for us. But the switching was great. Joel Embiid's defense, which we can just transition into the second point. This is the best defensive series of Joel Embiid's career, and he's put together some good ones, and we needed every bit of it. The Celtics shot 94% at the rim compared to the Sixers' 83%, and that's not even accounting for, it's not just the 4 blocks and that ridiculous chase down block Embiid had in the fourth quarter where the Celtics were getting a little bit of momentum, and then Embiid turned it over but immediately sprinted back. Jaylen Brown got slowed up. I can't remember who was the first Sixer that was already back, but slowed up Jaylen Brown, and Embiid was able to recover and get the chase down block and, keep it inbounds to Maxey. But Embiid's defense was incredible last night, and that's just, to go along with the 33 points and the 7 rebounds. He set the tone early in the game with his offensive rebounding. The Sixers really took care of the marginal stuff, like winning the rebound battle, not turning the ball over, not having really any live ball turnovers to where the Celtics could get out in transition. But with that, they were able to get extra possessions. Their defense was set a lot, and Embiid was just an absolute terror because it wasn't just the blocked shots. It was the stuff the Celtics would not take at the rim because they saw that big 7'1" Cameroonian in the paint, and they're like, you know what? This is not the best decision. Let me pass it out. He helped out on drives. I mean, he was everywhere. He had a few fouls. Like, there was one where Jaylen Brown, I think, blew by PJ Tucker, but Embiid was able to recover and nearly had his head at the rim trying to block a shot, but it was a foul, and Jaylen Brown shot a few free throws. Jaylen Brown missed quite a bit of free throws yesterday. Looked like the top of his release was a little hesitant, but Embiid was everywhere on the defensive end. His paint defense has been incredible in this series and much needed because in game 1, even though the Sixers won, it was just a parade. It was just a layup line, and the Celtics were able to get whatever they wanted at the rim. Once Embiid was back, that was over. So Embiid's defense was critical. I also want to move on to my third reason. PJ Tucker, man, he is exactly what the Sixers needed. It's just hilarious that, when the Sixers signed PJ Tucker to that 3-year, $37 million contract, we all knew it was, kind of a risky investment. Tucker is 37, but we knew what we were paying for. We were going to get that grit, that toughness, and that leadership, and that corner 3-point shooting, the relentless offensive rebounding, the relentless defensive intensity. We were going to get that, and it was going to serve well in the playoffs. And through all the games this year where PJ Tucker had 0 points and people were kind of snickering at the bad contract the Sixers made, I just want to point out that we all knew that PJ Tucker isn't being paid to score. He's being paid to do all the little things. And in the big regular season games this year, everyone he showed up, everyone he's played hard, and people followed his lead with how hard he plays. And in these playoffs, he has been absolutely fucking incredible. Yeah, there are times where, he'll hesitate to shoot, like in I think it was game 4 or game 3, but PJ Tucker was hesitant, and Doc pulled him to the side right as the Sixers were going into the locker room for halftime, and it looked like he talked some sense into him, and he started firing corner threes more frequently. That's the only problem I have with PJ Tucker right now. Just let that bitch fly. Let that choppa sing. But he has been spectacular all playoffs. We haven't had a player in the Joel Embiid era, besides Jimmy Butler, that can go up to Joel Embiid and be like, yo, get your shit together, which is what he did in game 4. And it's just invaluable to have a player like that can hold your star players accountable. He can hold James Harden accountable because he's played with them for so long and they're good friends. And PJ Tucker was the exact kind of guy, literally the exact guy Joel Embiid called out after last year's playoffs and was like, we need that type of guy on our team. And he has been absolutely critical for us. I was always on the right side of the PJ Tucker argument. He is incredibly valuable, and he is a big reason why the Sixers were able to get this win last night, and it wasn't through the 1 3-pointer that he made. It was the offensive rebounding. He defended Tatum well. He defended Brown well. Whoever he was on, whoever his defensive assignment was, he played well last night, and it's not going to show up in the box score, but he's just been critical all playoffs. And then we move to number 4, and we got to give credit to Doc Rivers. I know. What a time. I've bitched about Doc Rivers for 3 seasons now, and it's mainly because he just doesn't do the low-hanging fruit stuff that's simple. Like in the Atlanta series 2 years ago. There was just low-hanging fruit stuff that cost us that series that just could have been avoided before, game 2 even started. But that's neither here nor there. Last year, the team was in flux because of the trade, the Ben Simmons stuff, then the trade, and trying to get used to each other after the James Harden trade. But this year, he has pushed all the right buttons. He's not playing a washed backup center. He's actually trusting Paul Reed to be Joel Embiid's backup center. And the Sixers have held even in the non-Embiid minutes these playoffs. That's fucking unheard of if you're a Sixer fan. We get killed in the non-Embiid minutes. But Paul Reed being the backup center and, of course, playing with James Harden and, another starter and a few bench players, they have held serve, and all you need to do in the non-Embiid minutes is hold serve. And if you do that, you're in great shape, but it was a marvelous development. Doc Rivers playing Paul Reed. Last night, he pushed another button. Instead of playing Jalen McDaniels, a long, rangy, athletic wing, we needed some of those on the roster. He decided to go with Danuel House, and Danuel House was awesome for us yesterday. 10 points, transition buckets, but not only that, more importantly, the one player on the roster that is like in that 6'5" to 6'6" range, which means he can toggle down and defend guards like Malcolm Brogdon, who he defended well yesterday. We have not had an answer for Malcolm Brogdon all series, but Danuel House defended him well yesterday, made him take tough shots, and it was Brogdon's worst game of the series. He was able to size up and, defend Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown really well, even though there were some fouls he got there. But Danuel House was big for us, and Doc Rivers had the guts to play him when Jalen McDaniels just wasn't working out in this series after trading for him at the trade deadline. And to go on top of that, the Sixers ran a lot of pick and roll yesterday. The Celtics were in a drop. They were determined not to give Harden any of the threes that he was getting all series long. And Doc decided we're just going to hammer Al Horford in the drop coverage. We're going to hammer Robert Williams. And the pocket pass was there all night for James Harden. They were playing out of the post. The Doc was just mixing it up. He was getting the ball in Tyrese Maxey's hands more, even with Harden on the floor, and that got Tyrese Maxey going. They didn't park Embiid on the high post and feed him the ball and have everybody stand around and watch. He was feeding the ball to Embiid on the block, which was really successful, and very surprising to me that the post-up was successful against Boston, which has been a trouble for us, but that was successful. Running a fuck ton of pick and roll with Harden and Maxey, letting Maxey play with the ball while Harden is off the ball, involving guys in multiple screening actions to get Jaylen Brown off of James Harden and get a weaker defender onto James Harden, and then initiating the Embiid Harden pick and roll. There was just creativity and right button pushing that Doc has done in these playoffs, where I'm like, all he has to do is just nail the low-hanging fruit stuff, experiment once or twice here or there, but we have the talent and the roster to where, a creative, or we don't need a creative coach like a Nick Nurse or a Mike D'Antoni. Doc just has to push the right buttons and make competent decisions, and to his credit, he has done that, and we got to give Doc Rivers credit. And then the fifth reason, and it's just this simple, Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris finally played good games together. This was Tyrese Maxey's best game of the series. He let that bitch fly from three. He took 12 threes. He was getting into the paint. He was shooting off the dribble and pick and rolls when the Celtics played drop. And he was pushing the pace. He was awesome today. Last night. His defense was awesome last night. Tobias Harris getting tough rebounds. He was in foul trouble, and there were some, bullshit foul calls. By the way, going back to Tyrese Maxey really quickly, one thing I do want him to stop doing is stop face guarding when trying to box out for a rebound, because the Celtics got offensive rebounds straight off of that when the ball would bounce in Tyrese Maxey's vicinity and he wouldn't get the ball, and then the Celtics would get it and it would result in a layup or a three. That's happened the last 2 games. Please stop fucking face guarding Maxey. Love you, but please stop it. But Tobias Harris was getting tough rebounds all game, set the tone in the first quarter with his rebounding. You know, the Sixers fed him a little isolation post-ups a little bit throughout the game too. If Malcolm Brogdon's going to guard you, you got to feed Tobias Harris on the block. He has a very reliable post fadeaway mid-ranger, you know, in the middle of the paint type of shot right there. So I don't mind those possessions. It's the possessions where, you know, early in the game, it was early in the second quarter, I believe, Joel Embiid had Derek White on him on the block, and Tobias had Horford on him, and Tobias had tunnel vision and tried to take Horford, and Horford, of course, you know, stuffed him at the rim. Tobias got the ball back, but got it to Embiid at the top of the three-point line at this point, and it just resulted in a possession that went nowhere. So cut out some possessions like that, but I guess no one can play perfect. But Tobias Harris played solid defense. He was hitting the boards harder than I can remember in this series, because aside from game 1, he really hasn't played well. His defense has been bad too, but he was awesome in this game. Foul trouble withstanding. But the Sixers' other starters needed to step up aside from Harden and Embiid, and Harden just played a good game. There was no in between where, you know, he's Michael Jordan for 2 games, and then he's worse than elimination Harden for 2 games. But he was just solid, right down the middle, 17, 8, and 10 assists, 1 turnover. He was spectacular yesterday, just playing and being the floor general, dicing up the Celtics coverage because they were not going to give him the three-pointer, so they gave him the paint all night, and the pocket passes were there, the spraying out to the shooters were there. But Maxey and Tobias Harris took advantage of compromised defenses, and the Celtics were just in scramble mode all night. But this was a solid, thorough team win from top to bottom. The best win of the process era, easily. I don't even think it's close. And the Sixers have a chance to get the second round allegations off their back on Thursday. We'll see what happens. This series is far from over. Still have a little bit of trepidation, not gonna lie. But man, last night was a great win.